Welcome into the Steelers Talk live show. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Thank you guys for joining me here on a Friday to kick off your weekend. And today it's Tell the Truth Friday, which, coming off that really tough loss last night to the Cincinnati Bengals, we've had a night to sleep it off. We've had the morning and the afternoon to watch the film. And today I've got some answers as to what exactly went wrong for the Pittsburgh Steelers on defense last night and how the Steelers can go about potentially fixing those issues in the weeks to come, because I think something that we can all agree on in this chat, whether you were panicking about the Steelers defense or not at this point, is that this Steelers offense is humming right now. And if you can get this very talented Steelers defense to play good football by the time we get to when you got to be playing your best football, which is in January, this is a Steelers team that finally has the talent all around the roster to be able to make some noise in the NFL postseason this year. Because in years past, what was the case, right? It was defense-led, and the offense wasn't any good. This year, to start the season, it's been a little bit of the opposite of that, where the offense has actually played very well, and the defense hasn't held up their end of the bargain. But I think we can all agree, with guys like T.J. Watt, with guys like Cam Hayward, with guys like Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, Patrick Queen, Jalen Ramsey, all these guys that the Steelers have on their defensive roster, it's one of the most expensive defenses in the league. I think the Texans technically have the most expensive defense this year, but it's a very expensive defense, and they are wildly underperforming to start this season. So how can it get better? That's what we're going to be talking about in our first segment today. And then today I'm going to be taking your questions on the Week 7 mailbag. So if you got something that you want to vent about, if you have something that you want to say and get on the mailbag this week, if you have a question that you want me to answer, if you want to ask something about some trade speculation stuff going around, feel free to ask your question, guys. And you can get your question down there in the live chat room by using hashtag Steelers. In that live chat room, you guys can use hashtag Steelers, put that in there, and then put your question in afterwards. So, for example, in one message down in the live chat, put hashtag Steelers, will the Steelers win 10 or more games this year, or whatever question that you have. And I'll answer that question for the mailbag today. Or if you want to guarantee your question gets on the show today, you guys can super chat. Any dollar amount, and we will make sure to get your question on the program this afternoon. So spam those me's down there in the comments section. If you've liked the stream already, we got 139 people watching live. Only 21 people have liked the show, so I need at least 40 people to like the show before we get into the first segment today. I see Ollie the Reaper. We got Sid P. We got Robert Maxwell. We got Chuck Dugan. We got Moto Jensen. We've got Paranormal in the Funhouse. We got Clem. We got Steelers Son. We've got Jonathan Lute. We've got Lee Moses. We got Isaac Flam Flam. We got Electric Divergent. We got George Pagadakman. Hope I'm saying that right. It just flashed on my screen. I couldn't read the whole name. Got Donna Elliott. We got Chuck Dugan, Aaron, Eddie, Rez, Aaron. We got Eugene. Got a good crew of Steelers fans ready to talk some Steelers football here today, guys. So we're at 34 likes right now. We need 6 more likes to get into our first segment here. But I'm going to bring in our producer here. Mr. Ponzi is with me here on a Friday evening. And Ponzi, tough loss last night, man. I think we all expected, at least on paper, the Steelers are the better team. I still believe the Steelers are the better team. And I think when the Bengals come to our place in a few weeks here after this next 3-game stretch, I think the Steelers will win. But, obviously the defense did not hold up their end of the bargain last night. They were completely healthy, so there's no excuses. And Joe Flacco, who, got benched and then traded away from the Cleveland Browns less than 2 weeks after he's traded to Cincinnati, completely shreds this defense. The run game regresses back to what it looked like in the first 2 weeks. And Jamar Chase, they just had no answers for him all night long. So, do you think this defense can bounce back? And if so, why do you think they can bounce back?
Well, I think a lot of people forget with these Thursday night games is that it is on a short week, but not only that in terms of rest, but in terms of preparation. They had to go from, changing off from the Browns, what they had to do differently against the Browns. And I feel like, obviously Joe Flacco was the Browns quarterback, but I feel like, it is one of those things where if there is an excuse for why your defense played bad, it is because, the short week in that rest, and it does have a lot of fatigue, especially with a good bit of older players. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the whole main excuse that they didn't play bad. Jalen Ramsey should have been better. But I think that the Steelers defensive coaches will all get together, and they're just going to figure out what works better. So I feel like they're putting a lot of players out of position. So I feel like, with this group of corners, Jalen Ramsey, getting all the safeties, Jabril Peppers, Deshaun Elliott, Darius Slay, getting them into positions where they can be better. And so I think that as the season goes on, it'll be a lot better, but the talent is indisputably there. So I think that with the talent, it's going to be hard not to succeed.
Well, here's the thing, man. I think we've seen the Steelers coaching staff make some legitimate adjustments to this defense at some points during the year. They went from being a very heavy base personnel offense with 5 down linemen the first couple of weeks, and it just wasn't working. And then in the Dublin game, they started switching more to a 4 down lineman, nickel-heavy defense once Deshaun Elliott got back in the lineup. And for two games there, it looked really good. It really did. Against Minnesota and against Cleveland, like they looked a lot better, but it was still imperfect, I think we can say. And then, those imperfections reared their ugly head against Joe Flacco and the Bengals on a short week last night. And, I think another thing, to your point about fatigue, with the short week, and then you have this stretch between the middle of the second quarter to the middle of the third quarter where there's like a 15-minute and 50-second stretch, okay, of football. The Bengals had the ball for like 14 minutes and 25 seconds of that stretch, and they had 33 plays to only 8 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So on a short week where fatigue is already playing a factor, like if that's something that's happening and your defense can't get off the field, they're going to get gassed. And I think at the end of the game, it got very, very apparent that defense just didn't have any energy left in the tank. And obviously, the answer to that is just get a fucking stop on the first couple drives there and don't let them keep driving down the field on you. I think that's the easy answer there. But I do think that, when Mike Tomlin has more time to prepare, when there's more time to prepare the communication for that week, all that stuff, we're not going to see as many big mistakes as we saw. And I'm personally, although I'm going to talk about a lot of the issues that I'm seeing on the Steelers defense right now in our first segment, I'm still not giving a hope on this football team because the offense is humming. They've found their offensive identity. We have seen this defense play good football, okay? Less than 24 hours ago, guys, we were talking about this Steelers defense as a unit that was continuously getting better, that we were getting excited about watching play versus the Bengals and how they've gotten better every week over the last 3 games. They took a step back this week, no question about that, but I think now, once you have a little bit more time to prepare for Green Bay, hopefully this defense can, make some proper adjustments on the mini bye week, and we can talk about this team being a little bit more balanced. But certainly it's looking like at this point, the expectations that we had, Ponzi, for this to be the best defense in the NFL, it certainly doesn't look like that's going to be the case this year unless some major changes are going to be happening over the next several weeks.
I agree.
All right, man. So if you guys want to get on the show today, make sure you guys super chat. Again, you get to guarantee your question gets on the mailbag today. When you super chat, every single dollar that you guys donate goes to the show here to help pay for equipment, help pay for graphics, all that stuff. It's not a requirement. I want to make that abundantly clear. But if you guys do want to donate to the show today and put your question on the show, feel free to do so. For those of you that don't know how to super chat, you guys can click the symbol down there in the live chat room that looks like a dollar bill. If you click that button, then it's going to bring you a menu of how much money you want to donate. You put in the dollar amount you want along with your question, and then you send it in. So be like my man Bernard Nixon, always the first one to get a question in. Shout out to Bernard. He says, still not giving up on this team. Aaron Rodgers, we trust. In Aaron Rodgers, we trust. That's right, Bernard. Aaron Rodgers currently has tied for the league lead in NFL touchdown passes right now.
Which is crazy because, he made a lot of vintage Aaron Rodgers throws last night.
A lot of
off the pocket, getting out of structure.
Yes.
And it was beautiful to see him work. I mean, even then, I think it was like 69.5 yards in the last Hail Mary pass, which was the longest throw
in the air in a while in the NFL.
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah, so the fact that you have a quarterback that can launch it 70 yards, Aaron Rodgers, no doubt about it, still has all that arm talent, and he's showing he still has the smarts as well. So he's playing really smart, really good football. Added 3 more downfield touchdowns to his total on the season so far, Ponzi. I think he's playing really well. I think the run game's playing well. The jumbo personnel packages continue to work week in and week out. If you can just and you can just find, the right mixture of schematics to work with this defense. And I think there's enough talent here to eventually make it work. It's just a matter of whether or not Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin eventually figure it out. If they can, then I think that this team does have the talent on the roster this year to be able to make some noise in the postseason and be able to beat good football teams in the postseason this year. And we're going to have an opportunity to see if the Steelers can beat playoff caliber teams over these next 3 games. I know a lot of people are doom and gloom right now, think we're going to lose the next 3 games, and maybe they do. But I honestly think the Steelers will win at least one of these next 3 games, and it would not surprise me at all if they win 2 of them. I would be a little bit surprised if they won all 3 and ran the table these next 3 weeks, Ponzi. But if they do that, I think we're talking about the Steelers as a team that's finally figured it all out and a team that's probably a legitimate Super Bowl contender at that point.
And I think, regarding your point with that, I think, at this point last season, correct me if I'm wrong, but the offense was really the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, at this point in the season, the Steelers' defense was the best defense in the league.
Exactly. And so I feel like you have a lot of core pieces, and in fact, you've actually gotten a little bit better on paper in terms of your defense. And now I think it's just more of who goes where, what scheme works, what works the best. But your offense, I mean, it's been kind of the surprise of the Steelers in general. They've been really good. I mean, they've only failed to put up 20 points, I think, once.
Yeah,
and that was against Seattle.
The Seattle game. And they should have had 24 because of the kind of tipped interception that should have been a touchdown to Pat Freiermuth.
And then, that game was a lot closer than, the final score indicated because of some mistakes. But I feel like with the Steelers offense, I've been really impressed about how they've been moving the ball. This jumbo look, they've found their identity. But also, it kind of seemed like during this game yesterday, Rodgers kind of got his mojo back off platform. I'm not saying he ever lost it, but he finally connected with Muth a couple times.
Yep.
And then, even a goal line pass to Darnell, he still scrambled out and found Darnell Washington wide open.
He's the same thing with the Jonnu one where I think it was like 8 seconds where he had the football and he was scrambling and, eventually, cross his body too. That shows off the arm talent. So I think the offense is humming. I think the defense has the talent. It's just a matter of figuring out how these puzzle pieces work. I think a big problem, Ponzi, we're going to talk about this in the first segment, I think they run too much man. And I know that a lot of people in Steelers Nation are like, we run too much zone. But I actually think it's the opposite, where we run a lot of man, actually. Believe it or not, we actually ran more man last night than we played zone. And it just wasn't working. Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay are not man corners, all right? They're just not. At very most of their man match, where, they're playing off coverage, they've got their eyes on the quarterback, and they've got rules as to who they attach to. And I just think that Ramsey and Slay have lost a step athletically in terms of their long speed. And because of that, they can get toasted, man. And we saw that against Jamar Chase in one-on-one coverage when those two guarded Jamar Chase. He just absolutely killed them time and time and time again.
And T. Higgins.
Exactly. So I think that – and then on the other side of the spectrum there, Joey Porter Jr. is not a good zone corner. He's a pure man corner. So you have to kind of find the right mixture here so that everybody in this defense can eat. I actually think Brandon Echols actually did a pretty decent job last night. He's done a pretty decent job all season. So, Darius Slay has really struggled this year. It would not shock me if they make a move to play Brandon Echols more, especially if this continues with Darius Slay. Ramsey, I think the fix for him is just don't ask him to go up against elite receivers one-on-one in man coverage on the outside. Like, just put him in the nickel, put him at free safety, allow him to do that kind of stuff, and keep his eyes on the quarterback, play instinctively. That's what he does best, all right? And I really don't think you're really setting your defense up for success when Jalen Ramsey is outside in press coverage, going up against an elite receiver like Jamar Chase. He just can't keep up with guys like that anymore. And honestly, when you go up against guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, you shouldn't be playing one-on-one man against them anyway. You should be double covering them as much as you possibly can, which unfortunately the Steelers didn't do last night. But Bernard with another 2 says A-Rod on pace for 40 touchdowns this year. I think the number's 38.
38.
I think the number's 38, but that's still a really good number, man. If you would have told me before the season Aaron Rodgers has given us 38 touchdown passes this year, that's the most touchdown passes that any quarterback has had here since Big Ben. All right, and it's been a very long time since even Ben was able to put up that kind of number. So, absolutely, man. Aaron Rodgers is really doing a great job getting the ball into the end zone. And this offense, like I've been saying, has been playing really good. So hopefully they can keep that up. Speaking of the offense, Smootest Buddha says, do you think it's only a matter of time before the jumbo look gets shut down? No, I don't. Because, listen, man, on that right side or on that overloaded side of the jumbo personnel, you got over 1,000 pounds of human being over there, okay? So I think what they'll do, Smootest Buddhist, and we saw this versus Cincinnati last night, You're going to adjust by putting an extra big body out there, probably a linebacker, and then you're going to put a safety in the box, and you're going to play a lot of one high safety. And what happened? Aaron Rodgers threw the ball down the field. What have I been telling you on this channel, guys? Once you start playing these jumbo personnel looks, eventually these teams are going to start putting an extra body in the box with one high safeties, and that's going to open up DK Metcalf down the field, Pat Freiermuth down the field, and that's exactly what we saw last night. Okay, Aaron Rodgers was absolutely dealing down the field versus these single high coverages, okay? So, yes, I think the jumbo look is here to stay. I think that, Cincinnati knew it was coming last night, and they couldn't stop it, plain and simply, all right? Cleveland knew it was coming. They couldn't stop it. So, I'm looking at this unit here, and they're doing exactly what they need to do with this jumbo personnel look, and I think it makes it very difficult to play the Pittsburgh Steelers offense because it makes you pick your poison, right? Are we going to try and stop the run and leave the downfield opportunities for Rodgers open, or are we going to stop the pass and allow Jalen Warren to have these open rushing lanes? It's very, very it really puts the defense in a bind. So yes, Smoottus, I think it's here to stay.
And to add on to your point there, I think Rodgers had his biggest ADOT, or average depth of target, all season last night. And I mean, it showed. I mean, those two long touchdowns, or those not two long touchdowns, the long throw to DK, then the long touchdown. He's throwing it down the field more, and I feel like that jumbo package is even better. Just because Darnell is kind of maybe establishing himself a little bit more as we saw him last night.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got a couple more here before we get into our first segment. $2 from Bernard says, when's the last time the O looked this good? 2017? Final year truly of the Killer Bees?
Yeah.
That's probably what I would say.
Because that was last year Bell played, right?
Yeah, it was last year Bell was playing, and then, of course, they let go of AB shortly after that as well. So I'd say 2017, Bernard. It's been a long time since this offense has looked this good. The only key with a 2 says, man, I really want Slay to be good. I really want him to be good too, man. We spent a little bit of a chunk of change on him, so certainly I would want that money to be well spent. But listen, man, he's 34 years old, and kind of like receivers and kind of especially running backs, once you hit 30, you're just not the same player athletically. It's just father time comes for these types of players, especially for a position like corner where you gotta have the speed. And we saw it last night with him going up against a shifty, fast receiver like Jamar Chase. He couldn't even stay in the same universe as him, all right? Like, it was embarrassing. When they would press him versus Jamar Chase, he would get instant separation, like that, all right? Like, he's just not a man corner. So if the Steelers want to play more man, I just don't see how you can keep Slay playing on this defense. He's just too slow. And if you want to play more off coverage, if you want to play more zone, if you want to play more man match, if you want to do more of that stuff, I think Slay can still do that. He showed that last year. The Eagles run an off zone system with a lot of quarters and a lot of cover 6 and a lot of that stuff. A Fangio system, obviously, and he was awesome in that system, right? So you could if you want to run more of that stuff, I'd be perfectly fine with Slay playing more with this defense. But he's had mental mistakes. He's had busted coverages. He's getting cooked in man. So, it's just, he's the oldest corner in the league by 2 years. All right. The only other corner in the league that has started in this league that's 32 is Antonio Hamilton Sr., and he's barely played. And he's a backup for the Washington Commanders. All right. There's like no starting corners in this league above the age of 30, and Slay's 34. All right, man. I just think that he's at the point where he's probably done, unfortunately. $5 from I'm Lee Huncho says, how soon do you think the wide receiver trade will happen, and why do you think we'll draft a QB over Will Howard next year? So first question there, we'll see if they even make one. Roman Wilson actually showed some good stuff last night. I want them to give him even more opportunities. He was running good routes. He made some nice catches. He had that nice hurdle to make that first down. I want to see Roman Wilson get more opportunities, and then you're going to be injecting Calvin Austin III into this unit next week, and then you still have Jonnu, and you still have Pat, and you still have Darnell, and you still have Spencer, and you still got all these guys that you got to get reps to. So we'll see when it happens. I don't have a good answer for that. I'm Lee Huncho, but obviously the trade deadline is in a couple of weeks. In terms of why I think the Steelers will take a quarterback this next year, I think it's just, I love Will Howard as a guy, man. He's such a hard worker. He's such a likable kid. He wants it so bad. But listen, man, he's a 6th-round pick, and he went in the 6th round for a reason. And that reason was, outside of the college football playoff where he did play his best football for the Ohio State Buckeyes last year, didn't have a good regular season. The mental processing wasn't there. The accuracy wasn't there. He's got very upright footwork. He bounces in the pocket. He's got some decent arm talent. I think his ceiling is like a Derek Carr, but it's like if you have an opportunity to get someone that you think could be a superstar down the road in the 1st round next year versus Will Howard, who could be like Derek Carr, like for me, I want the guy with the higher upside because we got Joe Burrow in this division. We got Lamar Jackson in this division. We got Mahomes in this conference and Josh Allen in this conference and Drake May in this conference and all these great quarterbacks. And, I think you need an elite quarterback in this conference to sustainably long-term compete. And I just don't know if Will Howard has the ceiling to get to that superstar caliber status. I hope I'm wrong. I would love nothing more for Will Howard to be the franchise quarterback of this team. But at the end of the day, he's a 6th-round pick. They don't really owe him anything. And I do think that the Steelers as an organization want that moment of selecting their franchise quarterback in the 1st round in the draft that's being held in Pittsburgh. I think they want that moment. So certainly understand why people love Will Howard. I love Will Howard. But like I said, guys, I think they're probably going to go in a different direction at quarterback next year in terms of the long-term answer at that position. So let's get into our first segment of the day here, guys. Lots of great questions already. Don't be afraid to get those questions in. We'll make sure to get you in on the mailbag. Already a ton of questions getting in on the mailbag via Super Chat. So if you want to guarantee that question gets on the mailbag, make sure you Super Chat. But first up here, we got quite an extensive segment here, guys. It's probably going to be over 20 minutes. It's going to be a good one here. We're going to have an honest discussion about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, what they're not doing right, what happened versus Cincinnati that was wrong, and then how they can fix it moving forward. So without further ado, let's get into it. Steelers Nation, it's time to have an honest chat about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense here in 2025 after that, frankly, unacceptable performance versus the Cincinnati Bengals this Thursday night. And I think it's time to kind of sit down, talk about some of the issues that this defense is having, have an honest conversation about that, and then also look at some of the areas that I think that this coaching staff can address over the mini bye week to make this defense better, because I do think that the talent is here to make one of the best defenses in the National Football League. It's just about finding that right mix. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. If you guys want in-depth, nuanced, nerdy kind of in-depth content on the Pittsburgh Steelers like this every single day, that's what we provide for you guys for free here on Steelers Talk. There's a reason why we are the largest individually run Steelers news channel anywhere on YouTube. We are the only one with over 100,000 subscribers, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to join us here on Steelers Talk. Now, let's talk about this, all right? What ended up turning the game last night, in my opinion, in terms of the game and why things kind of went off the rails. Because remember, the Steelers stopped the Bengals for the first 2 drives of the game. The defense was looking like it looked against Cleveland and it looked against Minnesota, and it looked like that defense was playing pretty decently those first 2 drives, and then boom, you only force a punt one other time for the rest of the game, and they get a bunch of scoring drives, and they end up putting up over 30 on you. I think the big thing and the big swing in that football game, especially because it's a Thursday night short week, was that stretch between that first touchdown drive that the Cincinnati Bengals went on in the middle of the second quarter to the middle of the third quarter when they went up 10 points, all right? During that stretch, there was 15 minutes and 50 seconds of game clock. All right, during that stretch, the Cincinnati Bengals had 33 plays to the Steelers' 8, and they possessed the football for 14 minutes and nearly 14 and a half minutes of possession versus the Steelers' 2.5 minutes, because, of course, the Steelers threw those 2 interceptions pretty quickly in those 2 drives, and then the Bengals got the ball out of halftime, so they really controlled the football for a very large portion of time. And fatigue was always going to be a factor in this football game, guys. It always is on Thursday night. Usually you want to get a better rotation going on Thursdays because these players just played on Sunday. They haven't had a lot of rest and recovery time and all that stuff. But when your defense is on the field for 14 and a half minutes over almost a 16-minute stretch in a ball game, they're going to get gassed, guys. And it's almost impossible for the defense to stay fresh if that's the case. So, obviously the answer to that is just, make a stop on those first couple of drives, and then, you have a sustained drive on offense. You don't turn the football over. It was just a series of very unfortunate events for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially in the setting that they were in. A Thursday night football game on the road against a divisional opponent in a tough place to play. And, the defense was simply gassed in that second half, guys. You could tell. Once they went up 10 after that point, even though the Steelers were consistently putting points on the board there in that second half, consistently scoring touchdowns, that defense, you could just tell, was not moving at the same speed that they were in the first half because they were just on the field for so many plays. And you could just tell that, attrition set in, and that obviously that's not an excuse, and that doesn't give the Pittsburgh Steelers defense a pass in this football game. What they put on tape in this game was frankly unacceptable, and we're going to be talking about a lot of the issues that the Pittsburgh Steelers have on defense from a general perspective, not just in this football game, but just in general this season. And, it goes far beyond just the fact that they were fatigued in this game. But coming up here on Steelers Talk, we're going to go over what went wrong versus the Bengals. And then also later in the show here, we'll talk about some of the solutions that I would prescribe to Teryl Austin and Mike Tomlin to fix some of the issues that the Steelers defense is going through right now. But before we get into the rest of today's show, let me know down there in the comments section, who carries the most blame for the defensive collapse versus the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football? You let me know down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And while I tell you about our sponsor here, let me know down there in the comment section, what's one person that has the most blame for the defensive collapse last night? And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Picks. And you and I, we both make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Football season is finally here, and you better believe I'll be getting my Prize Picks lineups in all season long. Prize Picks is super simple to play. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks also puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks also offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And a new feature from Prize Picks that I absolutely love is injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks will not count it as a loss. So for this week's action here in Week 7, I'm taking the more on Dak Prescott passing yards, the more on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt rushing yards, and the more on Jaden Daniels rushing and passing yards combined. You guys can download the app today to get a lineup in and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup this weekend. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the free Prize Picks app today. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, so now let's get into my takeaways from the film from this unacceptable defensive performance on Thursday Night Football. First up here, too many heroes in run defense. And what I mean by this is that there's too many players in the Steelers' run fit that are abandoning their, responsibilities to try and shoot a gap into the backfield and try to make a big play for a TFL. Okay, and, I think that when it comes to run defense, everything is about gap structure and integrity and making sure everyone's in the right place at the right time. No one's getting blasted out of their particular gap, forcing a big hole. And unfortunately, last night, guys like Chuck Clark, guys like Patrick Queen, guys like Peyton Wilson at times were just out of position, leading to wide open holes for Chase Brown to exploit. And the team that came into the night dead last in rushing offense ended up having multiple explosive runs and had almost 100 yards rushing at halftime, all right, let alone the entire game. So, when defenders try and, be a hero and they try to abandon their responsibility to try and make a big play, that leaves opportunities for the offense to have big holes and to get explosive plays. And that's exactly what we saw from this Steelers run defense. last night. And the truth of the matter is, guys, if the run defense for the Steelers stinks, the entire defense is going to stink. It's the foundation of this defense. They want to get these teams into third and very long situations, and they just weren't really able to do that. Joe Flacco and the Bengals offense was very, very efficient, whether it was with the ground game with Chase Brown or Samaje Perine, or whether it was the short passing game. They were just consistently taking a profit and consistently moving the football, and they were very rarely moving backwards, which is really what the Steelers want to do. They want to force the issue. They want to get these teams to be moving backwards to force third and longs, which would, of course, accentuate the strength of this defense, which is the pass rush, but they weren't really able to do that. So if you can get the run game fixed, you guys, we've seen it. We've seen this defense play better. When they've stopped the run, this defense, is pretty productive, and they do a good job preventing points, forcing turnovers, getting off the field, that sort of stuff. But that just wasn't the case this week versus Cincinnati. And moving forward, the message from the coaching staff has to be, just do your effing job, all right? Just fill your gap, all right? You don't have to be a hero, all right? You don't have to go out there and make the big play. Just do your assignment, fill your run fit, and just do your job, all right? If you do those things, we will be successful. And sure, will we give up maybe a 2-yard gain versus, having a -2 or -3 TFL and for you to stuff your stat sheet? Sure, but at the same time, we're not going to give up as many 20-yard runs or 30-yard runs and, these explosive plays that shift the momentum in the football game. So that has to be the message this week and moving forward, in my opinion, is to be gap sound. Now, the bright side, guys, is that we have seen this run defense be pretty darn good, all right? In the 3 games previous to this game versus the Bengals, versus the Patriots, versus the Vikings, and versus the Browns, 3 teams that, can run the football a little bit. They did a really good job, stopping those teams and, preventing them from having big gains and, keeping a lid on the running game, which, of course, led to more opportunities to rush the passer and more third and long situations. So if the Steelers can just get that right, that is a foundational kind of focal point that the Steelers need to get right in the future if this defense is going to hit its potential. But then, talking about the pass rush, a lot of people are blaming the pass rush for this game, saying, they're ghosts and, they're invisible and all this stuff. But there really wasn't any time for the pass rush to get home. Joe Flacco, to his credit, got the ball out extremely quickly, had answers to everything the Steelers were throwing at him schematically, and it was an average of 2.21 seconds was the average time to throw from Joe Flacco in this football game. And, obviously that is extremely quick and that is very efficient. And, if you're a pass rusher and you only have less than 2.5 seconds to get to a quarterback, you're probably not going to get to him, right? So the Steelers secondary and the coverage needs to do a better job. And we'll talk about some of the problem areas in the coverage here in just a second. But if you're blaming the pass rush, for me, it wasn't really on the pass rush in this one, guys. I actually thought that the defensive line in terms of the pass rush looked pretty good. Cam Hayward had a lot of close calls in this one, some very quick wins, but Flacco just got the ball out fast. Nick Herbig was his usual disruptive self. Alex Highsmith had the most pressures out of anybody on the team last night, and Keanu Benton got a sack as well. I will say the one person on the defensive line and on the pass rush that underwhelmed for me was TJ Watt. He got more one-on-one opportunities than he usually gets, and it was against a young right tackle in Amarius Mims, who's had his struggles in this league, and TJ still wasn't able to make that much of an impact. Now, like I said, it's tough for TJ to get to Joe Flacco when he's getting rid of the ball as quickly as he was, even in a one-on-one situation. But you still, expect, if TJ's going to get more one-on-one opportunities, he's still going to make a bigger impact on the game than he ended up actually having. But a big issue with this football game, guys, from a game planning perspective, from an adjustment standpoint, in my opinion, from a game planning perspective, was that Teryl Austin and Mike Tomlin didn't double Jamar Chase enough. All right, they doubled him a couple of times. It's not like they never did it, but they definitely didn't do it enough, and Cincinnati certainly identified that early on in this game, and then they decided after that second drive in this football game to really force feed him the football, whether it was screens, whether it was slants, whether it was, fades to the end zone, whatever the case may be. Jamar Chase had 16 catches on 23 targets. Honestly, he should have had more catches than the 16 he got. He had a couple drops, but he finishes up with 161 yards, over a first down per reception, and a touchdown, and he just absolutely chopped up the Steelers defense. And, Pittsburgh's plan coming in is what they've been saying this entire time. Ever since they trade for Jalen Ramsey, what have we heard from Mike Tomlin? We specifically got Jalen Ramsey to man up teams like the Bengals. All right? So they've been saying it for months now. We're going to play man coverage against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. All right? So, Jamar Chase said it himself in his post-game press conference. Yeah, we knew exactly what they're going to run. And what he means by that is I knew they were going to play a lot of man-to-man coverage on me, and they came ready with a bunch of rub concepts, and then plain and simply, like, Jamar Chase just cooked the guys that the Steelers had against him, whether it was press, whether it was off, whether it was zone, whether it was man, it did not matter. And because of that, the proper adjustment that Teryl Austin and Mike Tomlin should have made was to double the guy, all right? But they really didn't do that on a consistent basis throughout this game. And then, it wasn't just man coverage, guys. When they did go to zone and they did throw in Tampa, they did throw in a fire zone, they did throw in some cover 3 buzz stuff. It wasn't any better, all right? Joe Flacco was still able to go 1, 2, 3 within rhythm, and then Jamar Chase was open against zone as well. And of course, Joe is a established quarterback that's been in this league for a long time. He can pick apart a defense with his mind, and he certainly did that versus the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. And if you don't believe me, man, just take a look at the amount of coverages that Jamar Chase caught a football against last night versus the Bengals. He caught balls against 8 different types of coverages. Now, man coverage was certainly pretty heavy here, okay? Cover 1 blitz 5 times. Cover 2 man, he caught 3 balls against cover 2 man, all right? So man was certainly not working. But then also zone coverages like cover 3 buzz, quarters, which is a man match coverage. You got Tampa 2, cover 1 robber, another man coverage. You got cover 3 fire zone, and you got 2 buzz man. So that all culminates there in 18 catches. And a lot of that is man coverage, but there's also zone coverage mixed in there. But, plain simply what this comes down to me is Tomlin's hubris, okay? Coach T thought, that Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and Joey Porter Jr. were good enough players to go up against maybe the best receiver in the game today, one-on-one with no safety help over the top in terms of a double team, and hold up. And he was just wrong about that. And then, and listen, man, if you go into the game with that plan, that's fine. But, if it's not working, and it's clearly not working, you got to make the adjustment. And the team just didn't do that. And they should have consistently double-teamed him at least at the start of the second half, but they continued to not do that. He was continuously getting one-on-ones, and he was continuously getting open because of that. So the Steelers, the next time they play Cincinnati in just a few weeks, I really hope Mike Tomlin watches the film and realizes, yeah, we're not good enough in the secondary to go one-on-one versus Jamar Chase. And I hope they come together with a much better plan in the future to really handle the big-time talent that is Jamar Chase, who really killed this defense this week. But I was also really disappointed specifically with Jalen Ramsey on tape, man. And it wasn't just what he did against Jamar Chase, where he got toasted time and time and time again, but he was also getting toasted against T. Higgins and, others. And, it just wasn't a good night for number 5, unfortunately. And I think what we learned last night, guys, is that Ramsey's just not a high-end man cornerback anymore on the outside. All right, back in his prime when he was say in Jacksonville, he was one of the best pure press man, lock him down, number 1 man-to-man corners in the National Football League. It's pretty apparent at this point he's no longer that caliber of guy. Now, I still think he can be a very good player for this Steelers defense, and we've seen him do a lot of good stuff for this team. All right, but he doesn't have the juice athletically to be able to stick with these guys in press man coverage. We saw that last night. I think he's much more suited to play, in the nickel and play at free safety and play with leverage and all these different things and allow himself to watch the eyes of the quarterback and play instinctively, because Jalen Ramsey is still an absolute dog that can make these high-end plays. But, in terms of just one-on-one man coverage, I'm going to lock you down on an island, I think we saw last night he's not capable of doing that anymore, and I hope they stop using him as an outside man cornerback in weeks to come. And then also Darius Slay, unfortunately, is very apparently slowing down, and I think it's because of age. And listen, man, Father Time comes for all of us, and plain simply, Slay is the oldest starting cornerback in the National Football League by a wide margin. There's only a handful of corners that are still kicking out there on NFL rosters that are above the age of 30, and most of those guys don't play a whole lot, and the ones that do aren't very good. And Darius Slay, it's very admirable that he's been a very serviceable player for as long as he has been. He was a contributor to a Super Bowl champion team last year, but frankly, Slay fit inside that Vic Fangio defense in Philly because he was able to play a lot of off coverage, a lot of quarters, a lot of cover 6, and he wasn't really asked to go in man coverage all that often, and that's exactly what he's being asked to do here in Pittsburgh, and it's just not working out, man. Like it kind of feels like Teryl Austin wanted him because he was good as a man corner when he had him in Detroit, and he still thought he was that guy. But like at this point in his career, Slay at best is an off-zone cover corner in that regard, and he's just not a man-to-man press dude. And we've seen him have mental mistakes. He's had a number of blown coverages, and he's just getting toasted in man coverage, man. Him going up against Jamar Chase, it just wasn't even fair on the tape last week. And, honestly, I'm even looking at potentially even sitting him down in favor of Brandon Echols, who just brings more juice athletically than Slay does, especially if the Steelers want to keep playing man coverage. But then Patrick Queen, I think he looked a bit lost in pass coverage last night, man. There's a couple instances where he just wasn't in the right place at the right time, and I think that this has been a problem with Queenie for a while. Now, I want to make abundantly clear, I think he's really freaking good as a run defender and as a blitzer, and I think he has his moments, especially in man coverage, as a pass defender. But in zone coverage, man, he can get lost at times. And it certainly seems like teams make a concerted effort, especially when they identify the Steelers are playing zone, to target his zone because he can get lost and he's easily manipulatable and all these different things. So, Patrick Queen, I would say, I'm happy he's here, but he is a little bit of a liability in coverage at times. And I think that that's fair to point out. But, I think that, he is a net positive for this team, but certainly in pass coverage, he can have some lapses. But then, another thing here, guys, and this one really pisses me off, if I'm being completely honest with you. Why the hell was Chuck Clark starting for this defense last night? I mean, this starting secondary is all healthy. All right, Chuck Clark was brought in as kind of like a Band-Aid, kind of backup piece, and because some injuries had been beginning to happen during camp. But no, everyone was healthy, and Clark was playing at a starting level pace, and he wasn't playing like a starter. I mean, last week, he goes from being a healthy scratch versus the Cleveland Browns. He doesn't even get a helmet. And by the way, the Steelers had their best defensive performance of the season with him not even seeing the field, to now getting 43 snaps and a starting workload versus the Cincinnati Bengals on a short week. How the hell does that happen? I mean, honestly, what is the thinking there, Mike Tomlin? What is the thinking there, Teryl Austin, to start this guy who has had some really bad tape out there through these first several weeks? There was a reason why, and I was fully supportive of him not getting a helmet versus Cleveland. Now he's getting a helmet, and not only that, but he's getting 43 snaps. By the way, he's over doubling Juan Thornhill's snap production in this game, and Juan Thornhill made a really nice play on Jamar Chase. I think Thornhill's played very aggressively and pretty darn well to start this season. Yet for some reason, this team seems to like Chuck Clark more and trust him more. And then you got Jabril Peppers on the roster, fully healthy, ready to go, ready to help your defense. And no, we want to play slow, old Chuck Clark that can't tackle? It just doesn't make sense to me, guys. It just doesn't. And, Clark might have been the worst defender for the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. All right, and I'm talking about Jalen Ramsey, who was getting cooked time and time again by Jamar Chase. Same thing goes for Darius Slay. We've talked about those guys. There were some bad defenders for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know Clark made a nice TFL on kind of on a swing play early in the game, but he missed a big tackle, or missed tackle, I should say, on T. Higgins when he was playing quarters, which led to a touchdown that gave the Bengals the lead in this ball game. He missed multiple tackles in this game. We talked about the run defense and people trying to shoot gaps to try and be a hero. That was Chuck Clark throughout the entirety of this football game, consistently out of position. So I just don't get why this team and this coaching staff likes him so much and puts him out there so much. He's not a good football player. He misses tackles. He's slow. I would much rather see Juan Thornhill or Jabril Peppers get more time, and I think he needs to be benched from now on, man. I think after that performance, there's just no other way to look at that film and come to any other conclusion. That Chuck Clark is just not a very good football player. It's nice to have him on the roster in case there's injuries, but when you're fully healthy, there's no fucking excuse for this guy to be out there as a starting safety for this defense. And then, getting to the pass rush again here, guys, not enough snaps for Nick Herbig. Talking about snap count here. I mean, Nick Herbig, who has been maybe a top 10 edge rusher in the National Football League since he came back from that hamstring injury, he has been unbelievable, and he only got 28 defensive snaps versus the Bengals. He had 15 less defensive snaps than Chuck Clark last night. I mean, if that doesn't say, mismanagement in terms of your defensive personnel, I don't know what does. All right, Nick Herbig is one of the best pass rushers, pure pass rushers in the National Football League. And to me, this number and these stats right here are unacceptable. All right, you got Chuck Clark, who nobody wanted before the season. He was available during training camp. He's getting 15 more snaps than Nick Herbig, who might be getting $30+ million per season on his next contract because he's playing so goddamn well, especially in a game where fatigue is playing a factor and the Bengals are having the football for long periods of time. We're still not playing Nick Herbig. We're still not getting him into a higher workload in this defense. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And it has nothing to do with TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith. Those guys should absolutely be getting full-time starting reps as well. But Nick Herbig has earned a third of a share of those starting reps between these three edge rushers, and it's just frustrating as hell that this Steelers coaching staff, especially on a short week when you need fresh legs out there, doesn't see it that way. Then, of course, it seems like every single week there is at least one major communication issue in pass defense, and unfortunately this week that big blunder came in the biggest of moments in the fourth quarter when they're trying to drive down and win the football game, and they're playing cover 3 and they don't communicate with, lo and behold, Chuck Clark, who doesn't get the signal to go down and cut the shallow cross from Jamar Chase, leaving him wide open for a 20+ yard gain, setting themselves up for a T. Higgins play in man coverage with Jalen Ramsey in coverage to be able to make that catch and then put themselves in position for a chip shot field goal for the win. The communication issues, it seems like every single week there's a major coverage bust. There's a big mistake made by like Chuck Clark or Darius Slay or one of these other secondary players that just aren't playing well right now, and I'm sick and tired of it, man. The communication issues need to be figured out in the weeks to come, or else it's going to be a long season on the defensive side of the ball here in Pittsburgh. And then I'll just throw this in there. I don't blame the officials for the loss. The Steelers lost this football game, but they certainly didn't help. I mean, Joey Porter Jr., I thought had some very good reps in man coverage, and they flagged it. And I thought it was ticky-tack. I thought they flagged Jalen Ramsey on one where I thought it was very ticky-tack as well. And, the Steelers weren't getting the same calls, plain and simply. And then there was a couple of missed OPI calls. I mean, there was one time where I think it was T. Higgins absolutely abused Darius Slay on a touchdown. I believe it was to Noah Fant on a big third down in this football game. And then there was another one where Jamar Chase just straight up pushes off of Jalen Ramsey, and it's not called. All right. In fact, it's called defensive pass interference, which is an absolute joke. So the officials certainly didn't help, guys. But, there's a reason why we have 10 things on this list. It's not all the officials. Certainly didn't help, gave them some big chunks at times. But, at the end of the day, the Steelers defense needs to play better. Now, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are enjoying today's show, if you love this in-depth, nuanced discussion that we like to do here on Steelers Talk pretty regularly on this channel, especially after Steelers football games, make sure you click that thumbs up icon if you appreciate this kind of content. So now let's talk solutions, all right? I'm not just coming to you guys with problems without ways to fix it, okay? Here are some ways, and I've got 8 things that I would do if I were Teryl Austin or Mike Tomlin that I think can make this defense better moving forward, starting as early as Week 8 versus the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. All right, so the first thing that needs to be done is the do-your-job mentality has to be emphasized in the run defense. And I think that this is very, very implementable because it's probably already there. All right, I'm sure Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott a couple of times, Patrick Queen a couple of times. They're going to be called out in these team meetings for being out of position. And I think that the big thing this week, heading into Packers, especially because they got Josh Jacobs and they got a really good run game, is to fill those gaps. Don't try to do too much, and do what you did versus New England. Do what you did versus Minnesota. Do what you did versus Cleveland, and play gap-sound run defense. We know this team is capable of it. So that just needs to be the message in terms of fixing the run defense. Then another thing that I would do here, guys, is don't run so many cover one blitzes. I mean, we've been running this cover one style defense this entire season where the Steelers are sending 5 players to the quarterback in pass rush, and then they have one-on-one coverage across the board. But the problem with that, guys, is that this team is not really a good man team. All right, like Darius Slay is not athletically, inclined enough to handle some of these crazy route runners in the league. Same thing goes for Jalen Ramsey in one-on-one coverage, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. Joey Porter Jr. is really the only guy that really thrives in man coverage in this secondary, and Brandon Echols is probably second in that category. So I think the sooner that this coaching staff realizes that this is not a team that is a good man-to-man coverage team, I think the better. And I think the best way moving forward is to do post-snap rotations into zone coverage, like most modern defenses do, like Flores does, like McDonald does, like Saleh does. Like there's a lot of these teams that play mostly zone, but they find creative ways to, keep the quarterbacks guessing and rotate different players to different spots. That's the type of defense this Steelers defense should be. And if they can, go to that style of defense, I think they'll have more success than just a straight man-to-man system that they've been mostly running this year. Then we get to my suggestion here, which is I think they should take a page out of Brian Flores' playbook here and Vic Fangio's playbook here and play more man-match coverage. All right, and usually man-match is played from off alignment at corner, so you're not in the face. And what that allows guys like Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey to do is, use their instincts, keep their eyes on the quarterback, follow the coverage rules, and then stick to the guy that goes into their zone there. So I think that is something that Brian Flores has done extremely well in Minnesota. It's something that Vic Fangio has done really well in Philadelphia. Those are two of some of the best defensive play callers in football for a reason, and it's because when taught correctly, those kinds of defenses work extremely well. So I would want to see the Steelers play more quarters and palms, more of these man-match style of defenses. Because I think that Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay in particular are more suited for that style of defense. I mean, Darius Slay won a Super Bowl as a starter for a man-match style defense last year in Philly, and Jalen Ramsey has had some of his best career years in a Fangio-style defense as well in Miami and then, of course, in L.A. So, I just don't think these two guys at this stage in their career are built to, go up one-on-one and win consistently. I think we've seen that on tape plenty so far this year. I think that might be the biggest change that this Steelers defense needs to make if they're going to play better in the weeks to come. But that doesn't mean you don't play any man coverage. I would put Joey Porter Jr. on an island in man coverage more. And what I mean by that is I want Joey Porter Jr. on a receiver one-on-one to use his press man ability, okay, because this is what he does. Joey Porter Jr. is not a great zone corner. He doesn't have great technique. He doesn't have great instincts in zone, but what he can do is that he can get in the face of a player and he can shut them down with his long arms, his physicality. He's the only really high-end man corner on this team. So what I would do and how I would address kind of this mismatch of cornerback talent in this Steelers cornerback room is I would put Joey Porter Jr. on an island on a singular receiver on one side of the formation, and then I would rotate the rest of the coverage to the other side of the formation, all right? And I think that this would allow the Steelers to close windows to other receivers, but also take away Joey Porter Jr.'s receiver at the same time. I think that this is some of the best stuff that the Steelers have done on defense over the last several years. We saw it a couple of times last night versus Cincinnati, and it was one of the only times where the defense actually looked good. So I think that this is kind of what's best for the Steelers is you got Joey Porter Jr., one-on-one on his man in press coverage where he can jam and shut them down, and then you got the rest of the defense kind of dispersing to the rest of the area where the other receivers are to try and close windows and play zone coverage the rest of the way. I think that's the best way to set up this Steelers defense, and I'm hoping that Teryl Austin and Mike Tomlin agree with me on that. Now, in terms of Jalen Ramsey, what I would do is I would keep him in the slot and at free safety. I know Jalen still wants to, go one-on-one versus, Jackson Smith and Jigba and the Garrett Wilsons and the Jamar Chases of the world. But man, he just has to be a little bit more self-aware and understand he's just not that guy anymore, man. Now he can still be a very valuable player to this defense, and he has to fully embrace the Charles Woodson path at this point, in my opinion. All right, I still think he can be one of the better nickel defenders in the league. He's still a great tackler, great blitzer, great run defender. And then, when he's allowed to play with leverage and have eyes on the quarterback, that's where he's at his best. He is so instinctual, and he can really affect the football game in that way. But if you do what the Steelers do and you just stick him on a man and say, go win one-on-one, and that guy's just more athletic and shiftier than Jalen Ramsey is, that's just not using his skill set in the best possible way. So I would put him in the slot or at free safety and allow him to use his instincts. I think it makes his role and his impact on this defense immediately better. And then also, I would consider playing Brandon Echols over Darius Slay, especially if they want to keep playing a lot of man coverage. Like, Brandon Echols has at least a little bit of juice. He does have that athleticism still with him, and he's got some wheels now. And, he was actually the highest graded corner for the Steelers last night with a 78.8 PFF grade. Now, obviously, PFF grades far from gospel, but, they do get those grades from watching the film, all right? And Brandon Echols is somebody that, as somebody that has watched the film on the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's been one of the more reliable corners for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, even though he's not really listed as a starter. And, that's evidenced by, he has the highest grade for a Pittsburgh cornerback this season with 66.1. Jalen Ramsey is just behind him, but, Brandon Echols has really done a good job ever since he started back in training camp. He's really impressed me, and he's got some wheels, and he can stick with guys in man coverage better than Darius Slay can. So if you want to continue to try and play this man style of defense, I think Brandon Echols has to be the play, and I think that you have to sit Darius Slay down. Now, if you want to keep Slay in there, I would say make some adjustments to the type of defense that you're going to run, because he's just not a man corner anymore. But Brandon Echols has impressed me quite a bit, and he might have earned a starting spot here with another good performance versus the Bengals. And then another thing, guys, this one should be without question. It should have already been done. It's a joke that he even got an opportunity to start last night, but you got to bench Chuck Clark. As long as everybody's healthy, he shouldn't be getting a helmet, and you should be playing Juan Thornhill as the full-time free safety. His ability to come downhill, his ability to identify these short crossers and play aggressively towards them and shut them down, to hit people hard over the middle of the field when they want to throw the ball over the middle. Thornhill, I think, has played some really good ball this season. Hasn't been perfect, but a lot better than Chuck Clark has. And then Jabril Peppers, like when you want another box defender, put him in there. I mean, just having these games where Peppers doesn't play a single defensive snap is just lunacy to me. He's a good football player. Don't just use him on special teams, especially in favor of somebody like Chuck Clark. But then the final way that I would have the Steelers fix this defense is to have a little bit of an even split of reps between the top three edge rushers, all right? Last night, the Steelers very clearly had an established number one, that was TJ Watt, an established number two, that was Alex Highsmith, and an established number three, that was Nick Herbig. I think they have to get out of that frame of thinking and start thinking of, okay, we got three starting edge rushers that we're going to play pretty darn evenly, because Nick Herbig's just too good of a player to sit on the bench for a majority of the defensive snaps. And honestly, what I would do, guys, is I would put TJ Watt off the field more on later downs, on pass-heavy downs, because he's such a good run defender. I want him out there in those situations. He is just such an impact in that phase of the game, so you got to have him out there on early downs. And I'm not saying take him off the field in big moments all the time, in third and long situations or anything like that. But like Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith are so disruptive as pass rushers. Those are the two guys where, like, if you want to take TJ Watt off the field on a couple of third and longs every single game so that these guys can get some playing time and TJ can stay fresh throughout the game and throughout the season, I'm perfectly okay with Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith getting those kind of later down kind of reps, because Nick Herbig is a little bit lighter, maybe not the best run defender. He's not terrible against the run, but he's certainly I can certainly see the Steelers' stance that he's more of a passing down specialist. So if you want to kind of have TJ Watt play the early downs and then bring in Nick Herbig at times, I just think that Nick Herbig's too good of a player to not play more at this point, and I would love to see the Steelers coaching staff play these three guys relatively the same amount of snaps over the course of a football game. Now, at the end of the day here, guys, we've talked a lot about this Steelers defense and what's wrong with it, how it can get better, what they need to do to get out of this funk that they're in. But at the end of the day here, man, I really do believe that this team will play better moving forward. It's kind of a weird, Thursday night matchup on the road in a tough spot to play in the division. And, we've seen Philadelphia, the Super Bowl champions, lose to a one-win team, all right? In the New York Giants the week prior, we saw the Los Angeles Rams, one of the best teams in football in my opinion, lose to Mac Jones and a super injured 49ers team 2 weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. By the way, the Rams were home in that game as well. So weird things happen in division on Thursday Night Football. I think we've seen that, and I think now that the Steelers have a little bit of time here on this mini bye week, I think we're going to see a little bit of a different Steelers defense next week when we play the Green Bay Packers. I hope I'm right on that, but if not, we're always going to be here letting you guys know exactly what went wrong right here on Steelers Talk. So where are you guys at? Let me know down there in the comment section. What is your confidence level in this defense figuring it out this season? Give me a 1 through 10. 1 meaning no confidence at all, to 10 meaning I'm super confident they're going to figure it out. They're going to be just fine. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Now, I know this fan base is down in the dumps right now, but I just want to end this video on some positivity. Really, we usually do offensive and defensive takeaways in our film kind of breakdowns after games here on Steelers Talk, but we really focus on the defense because the offense is playing really well, all right? The run game is humming. The jumbo personnel packages are working well. The tight ends are playing really well. DK leads the league in receiving touchdowns this year right now. Aaron Rodgers is slinging it. He's making plays out of structure. He's got incredible arm talent. He's tied for the league lead in touchdowns right now. So this offense is absolutely humming. So if this defense can just figure it out a little bit and be competent, this feels like a team that could really make some noise when you really want to be playing your best football in January. And before I go here, I'll actually leave you with a quote from Aaron Rodgers' postgame press conference last night about how, this is a week-to-week league. Shit happens in the National Football League. Bad games happen, but you can't allow yourself to ride the roller coaster, and you got to keep that steady hand. This is what Aaron Rodgers had to say last night. Quote, "We had a chance to really open up some space in the division standings, but we're 4-2, still first in the division, got home games coming up, another Sunday night opponent against my former team. I'm not going to ride the roller coaster, and I know Mike Tomlin isn't. Hopefully you guys, talking about us, the Steelers fans, follow suit." All right, guys, that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk. I know it was a bit of a longer one. Appreciate all the sickos and the psychos that stuck with me here throughout this really long video. We really went in depth today because there's a lot of issues that the Steelers need to address here in the coming weeks if they want to become the defense that I think we all expected this defense to become. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button to track this team's journey throughout the 2025 season. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right. Crazy long segment there. So I appreciate all of you guys sticking with me on that one. And we need more questions. Okay, so make sure you guys get those questions in. We'll give you 2 minutes on the shot clock to get your questions in. All you have to do is put a comment in the live chat room using hashtag Steelers to get your questions in. We also have quite a bit of super chat questions from earlier that I'm sure are making the show. So we'll have a 2-minute shot clock. Ponzi will put that up on screen here momentarily. And I think we got some more super chats while we were in that segment, Ponzi. So we'll hit those while the shot clock is going. And you guys have 2 minutes to get your questions in on the show for free. All right, let's get into them. Clem with a 5 says, "Keep up the great work, Jack." Clem, I appreciate you, man. I put in a lot of time for this channel, so I greatly appreciate your support. $5 from Smoothest Buddha says, "You think there's any good QBs upcoming? To me, they all look not good enough. Maybe the ISU guy, the LSU." Oh, I mean, it looks like an I, right? So I thought, and Rocco Becht is somebody that's been mentioned, but LSU, with Garrett Nussmeier, the thing with him is he throws a lot of interceptions, and he puts the ball in harm's way a lot, and that is like the last thing Tomlin likes. So if Tomlin's still here, I don't think it'll be Nussmeier. I'm intrigued by Dante Moore. I'm intrigued by Fernando Mendoza. I'm intrigued by Ty Simpson. I'm intrigued by Lenore Sellers. But the thing about this year's quarterback class and the guys that could come out and be first-round picks, most of them can come back next year, or come back to school, I should say. So it's going to be interesting to see what mix of QBs actually come out. I think we'll still end up somewhere between 4 to 6 first-round quarterbacks, maybe 3 to 5. we'll see how many of these guys that are high-end guys that could go in the first round end up coming out. But what I would say to some of these guys that are considering coming back is that if you can go in the first round this year, you should come out. Just look at Drew Aller. He probably would have been a first-round pick if he would have came out this year with the weaker quarterback class, all this different stuff, but he decides to go back to Penn State. He underwhelms. He's a year older, and now he's going to be coming off an injury, and he just lost himself, I think, millions of dollars, not to mention the standing of being a team's first-round draft pick, which goes a long way in terms of the opportunities that you get in the National Football League. So, these guys like Ty Simpson and Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza, these guys that can technically come back next year, if they have a good season, they can be first-round picks this year, they should come out. All right, that would be the advice that I have for those guys. And we'll see exactly how many of these guys come out in our first-round picks. But I think there should be opportunities for the Steelers to get a guy that they like. $10 from Rad Doctor. Shout out to Rad. He's always putting in a little donation just about every single show. So shout out to you, my friend. And do we have enough questions now? All right, we got enough questions now. So without further ado, let's get into our next segment here, guys, because I don't want to keep you guys too long. I know that was a really long first segment. So let's get into our mailbag segment right now, guys, so you guys can start enjoying your weekend. So without further ado, and that's the second time I've said that, let's get into the Steelers Talk mailbag coming at you right now. It's the Steelers Talk mailbag here in Week 7, and I'm guessing some of the questions here are going to be pretty spicy given that we're filming this on the Steelers Talk live show on Friday, just about 24 hours after the Pittsburgh Steelers lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm guessing passions are high. I'm looking forward to the questions today, though. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to join the most interactive community of Steelers fans anywhere on the YouTube platform. We try and do our best, guys, to keep you involved in the conversation. We do these mailbags every week on our live shows. We also have daily community posts and polls for you guys to engage in. Also, we'd like to engage with you guys on the live shows and on the watch parties, all that great stuff. So if you guys want a place to come hang out, talk Steelers ball every single week, a place to come watch the football games as well. We have the largest watch parties anywhere on YouTube for Steelers fans, so make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already, if you're looking for an interactive fan experience, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. All right, so now let's start with Smootest Buddhist. $5 says, do you think it's only a matter of time before the jumbo looks get shut down? I mean, we'll see, but I really don't think so, Smootest Buddhist. And, I said this a couple weeks ago, where I predicted that Aaron Rodgers was going to start throwing the ball down the field more, the more success that the Steelers have with these jumbo personnel looks. And what has happened the last 2 weeks? Against Cleveland and against Cincinnati, the two games where Aaron Rodgers has thrown the ball down the field more often. It's been more explosive, all that great stuff. And why? Because these jumbo personnel looks were on one end of the offensive line. You got 4 players equaling 1,000 pounds of human being that can also move. And then you got Jaylen Warren, who can make guys miss and, can take advantage of the blocking that size advantage brings to this Steelers run game. So the run game looks phenomenal. They're moving the ball very consistently on the ground, which, of course, is opening up single high safety opportunities for Aaron Rodgers to rip deep shots to DK Metcalf and hit seam shots to Pat Freiermuth and get the ball to Jonnu Smith. And even Aaron is doing a great job, with the off-schedule playmaking now, and his feet look super quick back there for somebody of his age. So, yes, Moodus Buddhist, I think that this is sustainable. They've been able to do it against 2 top 10 defenses in the Vikings and the Browns, and then they completely killed a bad defense, as they should, in the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football. So I think that these jumbo looks are here to stay. I think the Steelers' offense is humming right now, and I don't see any signs of it slowing down. Then we got $2 from Bernard Nixon, says, when's the last time the offense has looked this good? I'd probably say since the 2017 season, when the Killer B era was kind of coming to a close in terms of their peak. So I'd probably say 2017 there, Bernard, is probably what my answer would be. So true or false? Let me know down there in the comment section. This is the best Steelers offense since 2017. Since the Killer Bee era, this is the best Steelers offense. Type T if you think that's true. Type F if you think that's false. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, and when that happens, take advantage of that time by letting me know if you think this is the best Steelers offense since the Killer Bee era. Then we get to Jacob here. It says, if the Steelers blow this lead and end up 10-7 first-round exits again, do you think they get rid of Tomlin? No, I don't. I think listen, man, like as long as they're making playoff runs and getting to the playoffs and as long as they're winning double-digit wins, I don't think they're going to get rid of Mike Tomlin. Now, maybe Tomlin, especially if Rodgers retires, maybe Tomlin's like, hey, trade me somewhere, get a first-round pick for me. I want to change the scenery. Maybe that's the case, but I highly doubt that. In my opinion, Jacob, in order to get rid of Tomlin, the team needs to miss the playoffs, and they have to really embrace a full-blown rebuild in the future. So that's going to take 9 wins at the very most, 8 wins, 7 wins more likely. So this team and this season's really going to have to go off the rails, in my opinion, if the Steelers are going to get rid of Mike Tomlin. And if they get rid of him because they have so much money left on his contract, I think they'd rather trade him away so that another team is on the hook for his contract. And also, the Steelers could easily get a first-round pick in exchange for Mike Tomlin. Future Hall of Fame coach, all this stuff. There's a lot of teams that would give up a first-round draft pick for the stability that Mike Tomlin would theoretically bring to their franchise. Then $5 here from I'm Lee Huncho says, how soon do you think the wide receiver trade will happen, and why do you think we'll draft a QB over Will Howard next year? In terms of the wide receiver trade, I'm not even 100% positive they make one. I think that they're certainly shopping around to see what kind of deals they can get, but if we know Omar Khan, he's not going to do something unless he feels like, A, he's desperate to get a receiver, which maybe he is, but also B, if it's the right price. And we've seen that throughout his time as GM, is that he doesn't like to budge off of his number. And like he knows what the value is for that particular player in a trade for this franchise, and he's not willing to budge off that number. So we'll see if there's somebody that fits that bill, but Roman Wilson showed some good things against the Cincinnati Bengals. It looked the last 2 weeks, he's had some crisp routes. He's had reliable hands. He's looked pretty good to me, and I'm hoping he can get some more opportunities. And Calvin Austin's coming back here, and they're using Pat Freiermuth more. They're using Jonnu Smith. They're using DW. Like, they're using the plethora of weapons they have here, especially at the tight end position. So it'll be interesting to see if they make a trade for somebody. I would love to add a Jacoby Myers or a Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed, but we'll see if any team is willing to take the Omar Khan price to make a deal happen. In terms of the quarterback with Will Howard, he's a 6th-round pick, and I think his ceiling is probably capped. I think probably his ceiling is someone like a Derek Carr. He actually reminds me a lot of Derek in his play style, kind of a stiff throwing position. He's got some good arm talent, can throw the ball down the field, but the accuracy can be spotty and the mental processing can be spotty with him. And he's not the greatest out-of-structure playmaker. So I think his ceiling, in a conference with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Drake May and all these superstar quarterbacks, I feel like the Steelers probably want a quarterback long-term that has a little bit of a higher ceiling. So it certainly seems like the Steelers are stockpiling picks to take their quarterback round 1 of the draft next year in Pittsburgh. And I certainly understand why people love Will Howard. I love Will Howard. I'm wishing the best for him. But at the end of the day, he's a 6th-round pick, and the Steelers don't necessarily owe him anything at this point. All right, so now, before we get to the rest of the questions here in the Week 7 mailbag here on Steelers Talk, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. You and I, we make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Football season is here, and you better believe I'm getting my Prize Picks lineups in all season long here with professional and collegiate football. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks also puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks also offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And a new feature from Prize Picks that I absolutely love is injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks will not count that as a loss. So here is my Week 5 lineup for the National Football League, or for Prize Picks here, or for professional football. I'm taking the more on passing yards for Dak Prescott, the more on rushing yards for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and the more on pass plus receiving yards for Jaden Daniels. So if you guys want to get a Prize Picks lineup in here this week, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Got one here from Czar Craig, says, do we have any clue of why the Steelers are refusing to make Jabril Peppers a bigger part of their defense? Probably because they see him more as a true strong safety, and they view Deshaun Elliott as their strong safety. That's the only thing that I can think of, because, like, the idea of having Chuck Clark as your starting free safety, it boggles my mind, man. He's not nearly fast enough to play that role, in my opinion. I think we saw that last night versus the Cincinnati Bengals, where he missed multiple tackles. He was out of position in the run game. Chuck Clark is a backup safety at this point in his NFL career, and they're playing him starter-level snaps. I can't explain it. For me, if I am Mike Tomlin or Teryl Austin, I'm playing Jabril Peppers way more on defense than they have over the last few weeks. Now, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are a real one, really do appreciate all the questions that you guys are putting in here this week. It helps out the channel, helps out the video, helps get new eyes to the channel here, guys. So tell the YouTube algorithm that you're enjoying our content by clicking that thumbs up icon today. Got another one here from Smootest Buddhist. Says, you think there's any good QBs upcoming? To me, they all look not good enough. Maybe the LSU guy. I think when you look at this class from the perspective of the guys that were supposed to be good and were hyped up heading into the season, Cade Klubnik, Arch Manning, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, Lenoris Sellers, all these guys that were supposed to be first-round picks are underperforming this year, right, guys? And I think that's where Smootest is coming from. But there's also been some very pleasant surprises, all right? Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana. Now, I think he was a little bit more highly touted, but not a lot of people knew his name heading into the year. Then you have Ty Simpson from Alabama. Phenomenal quarterback for the Crimson Tide. Would love for him to be the next starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dante Moore, super easy and fun arm talent, a great playmaker out of structure as well. Really like his skill set, and then Lenoris Sellers, as a project type guy where you draft him, develop him, and then sit him for a year and play him in year two. I think that, the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they bring back Aaron Rodgers this year, would be the perfect place for a guy like Lenoris Sellers to develop in the National Football League for a year. We'll have to see which guys come out for the NFL draft this year, and of course we'll have to make a determination then. But I like some of the kind of pleasant surprises that we have seen in the college football this year. Then we got one from Grady. He says, do you like the way Aaron is leading this team? I have seen multiple moments between him and his receivers where he is yelling at them. Also, the incident of Broderick Jones tackling Rodgers. It's just, I would have been pissed at Broderick if he would have tackled me that way. He's a 300-plus pound human being, and I'm not nearly his size, and he's taken me down by, the neck. I can understand why Rodgers was a little heated in that moment. Also, listen, man, people aren't doing their jobs. I want somebody that holds people accountable. Would you rather have Aaron Rodgers holding these guys accountable? Or would you rather have Aaron Rodgers say, or Russell Wilson saying, you're all good, King, you're all good, we're all good, it's all good? It's no, it's not good. You didn't do the thing right, and we're not just going to coddle you all the time. You are paid to play the game of football and to do your job correctly. If you don't do your job, it's important that, there's accountability from the leadership, from the players inside the locker room. And Aaron Rodgers provides that. And you know why he's able to do that, guys? It's because the players respect him. It's because he's really good to the guys in the locker room. He's very friendly with them. He invites them out to his house in Malibu, right? He does all these different things. And, he treats them with respect. He treats them like adults. And, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. And I actually really appreciate that about Aaron Rodgers, where he's not going to mince words. And it's listen, man, the margins in the NFL are super small. We saw that this week versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Just one play and the game can be over, okay? And Aaron Rodgers understands that. And Aaron Rodgers has a great urgency to finish his career on a high note and to try and get this team to a place where they're winning as many games as possible, putting themselves in the best position to win playoff games this year and go on a run to hopefully try and win a Super Bowl this year. So that's his focus right now. And if people aren't doing the right things, I have no problem with him kind of correcting that behavior a little bit by saying, hey, what the hell are you doing? You got to do this the right way. So maybe that's not everyone's cup of tea, but nobody complained about it when Tom Brady did it in Tampa Bay. No one complained about it when Tom Brady did it in New England. He did it consistently. He yelled at his players all the time, and people said it was a great thing, showed how great of a leader he was. But with Aaron Rodgers, it's not so great, right? So you can see the double standard. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. What position, if any, should the Steelers address ahead of the trade deadline? Do they still need a receiver? Should they go get corner now? Should they get a replacement for Broderick Jones at left tackle? What say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk. Thank you so much for listening to my answers to the questions on this week's mailbag. If you guys want to get a question on a future mailbag, we usually go live every single Tuesday and Thursday, and we film the mailbags on Thursdays. So make sure you guys join us here on Steelers Talk. Click that subscribe button. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, man. We're going to get out of here because we got some stuff that we got to take care of here before we go start our weekend. And it's definitely been a tough spot and a tough situation to be in mentally over the last 24 hours because we went from, 24 hours ago, we were sitting like, we're going to be 5-1, 4 games ahead of Baltimore, 3.5 games over the rest of the division, playing with house money versus Green Bay, Indianapolis, and Los Angeles, and now it's not so much. There's, the Bengals are only 1 game out of first place. You don't have that necessarily commanding lead over Baltimore anymore. You really feel the pressure to get at least 1 win over the next 3 weeks versus 3 tough opponents. But, I do still believe in the talent on this football team. I still think there's a path forward that can get this team into Super Bowl contention. And I think the offense is playing the best football they've played in a long time, Ponzi. So if this defense can just play, it's crazy that we're talking about it in this way, Ponzi, right? Because before we were saying the offense just needs to be good enough. The defense is going to be awesome, right? It's been the exact opposite, where we're talking about the offense is the thing that's driving the bus right now, and the defense is the thing that needs to just be good enough. And if they can do that, which they certainly have the talent to do, we've seen that, the 3 weeks prior against New England, against Minnesota, against Cleveland. We know this defense is capable of more of what we saw versus the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday. I still personally have a lot of optimism. Like Aaron Rodgers, I'm not going to ride the roller coaster too much. I'm very disappointed in their performance on Thursday, but I also know and understand it's a week-to-week league. Teams have bad games, especially on Thursdays, especially on the road, and especially within the division. So it was a bad game, but I also see reason for hope down the future. And Ponzi, I think we're going to win at least one of these games in the next 3 weeks. I think they're going to be way more competitive against these legitimate playoff caliber teams over these next 3 weeks than people are thinking. I think I'm going to predict. I'm not going to give my score prediction yet, but I'm going to pick the Steelers to beat the Packers next week on Sunday Night Football.
You look at the matchups that they have, and these are really good teams in the Packers, Colts, and Chargers, right? And if you win 2 of those, you're back to feeling the highest of highs, because the fact that those are good teams, and
you are home in these 2 games. Like, is it impossible that the Steelers win these 2 games?
No,
I really don't.
And a lot of people are going to go like, oh, well, you lost to the Bengals. I think a lot of people forget the Bengals do have playmakers on their offense, and it is very hard to stop. It is a very hard offense to stop. The defense is bad, but the Steelers did take advantage of that bad defense. Mm-hmm. Other than those 2 turnovers, where one, Rodgers just threw it up in the air. I don't know what he was thinking.
That was by far his worst throw.
And then the other one where DK Metcalf got out-muscled. Hard play. Great play by, was it DJ Turner?
Yeah, Turner.
Turner, where he out-muscled DK Metcalf, which, I think Metcalf should have came down with that ball. But other than those 2 moments, the Steelers played perfect. They got
close
to
perfect.
The lead.
Yeah.
They got the lead. They let their defense try to win the game for them, and they didn't.
And, I'll say this, too. The Steelers' defense has had 4 opportunities to close a game out this year.
Yep.
They're 3 for 4. That's pretty good, All right, if you're getting 75% of your chances to close out a game and you get 75% hit rate on that, I'm taking that every time. All right, and obviously they didn't do it last night. They were gassed. I thought the defensive game plan wasn't very good with as much man coverage as they were running, without a double team on Jamar Chase. Like, it needs to be better, all right? But there is reason to believe, in my opinion, that it'll be better in future weeks. I think there's reason to believe that once we get to January, this team has enough talent to be playing at a Super Bowl contending level. And they didn't play like it last night, but I would caution people from trying not to be prisoners of the moment too much. And, try and look at big picture here and try and find solutions as opposed to just crying about problems. I think
what was the quote from Rodgers? Don't get on the roller
coaster.
Don't
get on the roller coaster. We won't. So he says, I hope we won't. So we won't here on Steelers Talk. You're clearly free to do whatever you guys want, but here on Steelers Talk, we're gonna keep a little bit of optimism here. And listen, like, if they lose all 3 games, the next 3 games, and you dip below 500. Like, that's obviously not good. And, like, we'll probably say on this show, yep, this season's probably over, all right? But, we understand that Thursday night games on the road in the division can be really weird, and they can be really tough to win, frankly. And Joe Flacco played a good game last night. Jamar Chase played a hell of a game, and the Steelers didn't come out with their best game plan. So hopefully next week versus Green Bay, they come out with a better game plan against Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. You know that the Steelers teammates are going to want to get Aaron Rodgers a win against probably the only time he'll ever play the Green Bay Packers in his career. So it'll be a fun one, man. I'm looking forward to next week. I really am. All right. I'm looking forward.
Rodgers revenge game number 2.
Rodgers revenge game. I'm looking forward to getting this bad taste out of our mouth from this really tough loss on Thursday. Hope you guys will be with us here next week. We will see you guys. Make sure you have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next time. And until then, here we go, Steelers.